This video is brought to you from the salesman.org HubSpot studio. Do you get nervous when you go to close the sale? Well, in this video, I'm going to share a simple two-step process to close any sale without any stress for you or the buyer. So stay tuned. Sam gets nervous when he approaches the end of the sales process. Does the buyer like me? Are they going to say yes? Is there a competitor involved? He asks all of these questions over and over to himself. All of these questions bounce around in his brain, and more often than not, when he comes to ask the buyer to sign the contracts, he's a big gibbering mess. All of these questions bounce around in Sam's brain, and more often than not, when he comes to ask the buyer to sign the contracts, he's a big gibbering, blubbering mess. The buyer then starts throwing out all of these last-minute objections at Sam because, well, the buyer's become nervous now too. Walter, on the other hand, well, he sits down before each meeting and he writes out exactly what he's trying to achieve, and then he follows this simple two-step process I'm just about to share with you, and he gets deals done like clockwork, seamless. Walter gets no last-minute objections. He's not distressed whether the buyer's going to say yes or no, because with this simple two-step process, it really doesn't matter what the buyer says. Eventually, the deal is going to get done. So let's jump to the whiteboard of President Club Success, and I'll explain this simple two-step closing process to you. So the first thing that you must do before you ask for the close is get your mindset right. And the quickest way to do this is to ask the question, what is the next step? Because if you don't know what you're trying to close, then how are you going to close the buyer? You've got to go from point A to point B. And this next step here could be anything. It could be getting the next call in the diary. It could be asking for an introduction to someone within the account, getting an agreement on terms, asking if the buyer wants to sign the contracts today, whatever it is. Before you close anything, you've got to know where you're going. Then, when you're ready to close the sale, you're going to ask one very, very simple question. Does it make sense to sign the contract? Does it make sense to make payment today? Whatever it is, does it make sense to do X, Y, Z? Does it make sense to move forward with this is the line that I typically use. And it really is that simple. If the buyer comes along and says, yes, then well done. Everyone's partying. You've closed the deal. Hurrah, you've done it. If they turn around and say no, then you're going to ask the second question, which is, what do we need to do to move this forward? And then something magical happens. The buyer, if you've built enough trust with them, if they feel like you can help them, if you've added enough value throughout the sales process, they're going to coach you on what you need to do to move things forward. And then you just ask this original question again. Does it make sense to sign the contracts? Does it make sense to make payments today? Again, if they say no, they're then going to coach you on what they need to move forward. And eventually, it has to be a yes if you go through this process enough. And it is that simple. Closing in B2B sales, when you strip away all of the weird 80s and 90s style manipulative sales training techniques, it's as simple as knowing what you want to ask, asking the first closing question of, does it make sense to move forward with whatever you've put together? Asking the closing question, does it make sense to move forward towards whatever you wanted in step one? If they say yes, congratulations, you've won the deal. If they say no, you go back through this feedback loop, back through this feedback loop until they do say yes. So that is how you close a B2B sale with two simple closing questions. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and why not click one of the videos that are on the screen right now to continue making selling simple.